My name is David Lee Summers, and this is an excerpt from my novel, Firebrandt's Legacy. This chapter is called Calamari Rodeo. Fish eggs. What, you mean like caviar? Asked the captain. No, I mean fish eggs in cryogenic containers, reported Nicole Lowry over the comlink. I think this freighter was bound for a hatchery or something. Ellison Firebrandt paced the bridge of the captured starship, a wary eye on the merchant crew bound to their seats. After giving the matter some thought, he spoke into his headset. Take the eggs. I have an idea where we can sell them. Very good, sir. With that, Lowry signed off. Firebrandt's first mate, Roberts, looked up from the pilot's console. I've powered down their main engines. What? The merchant captain struggled against the plastic zip tie holding his hands together behind the chair's back. Without the engines, we'll have no life support. We'll be dead in a few hours. That gives you a fighting chance to live, Firebrandt shrugged. I'm sure you can break those restraints and restart your engines with plenty of time to spare. You don't know that. Sweat beaded on the merchant captain's forehead. True enough. Firebrandt took 2 steps away, then whirled around, drawing a sword from a scabbard at his belt and pressing it against the merchant captain's chest. The alternative is that I could run you through right now. It would be quite messy and very painful, but it would assure your cooperation. And I'm sure would convince your crew to be well behaved without further bloodshed. Firebrandt looked up at the others tied to their chairs. Am I right? There were fast nods all around. The merchant captain fell silent, but he scowled, and a faint twitch of his right cheek indicated his anger at the crew's disloyalty. Firebrandt sheathed his sword and strode from the bridge, a flicker of a smile on his lips. Any crew he spared meant points in his favor, should he be captured and tried. Any dissent he fomented among those crew meant confused and obfuscated testimony, the perfect recipe for casting a reasonable doubt in a jury's mind. Firebrandt's crew gathered the merchant crew's sidearms and followed him out into the corridor. Once there, Roberts pulled the hatchway closed, then drew his Hepler pistol and fired 3 times, spot-welding the door to its frame. The pirates might not want to kill the crew outright, but they didn't want a quick pursuit either. The captain turned around and directed his crew to help Lowry and her team carry the fish eggs aboard the Legacy, whose bow was clamped to the merchant ship's flank. Robert stepped up beside the captain. So, you know someone who'll buy fish eggs? Not off the top of my head, but I have a good idea about an Alliance colony where buyers should be plentiful, and we can make a little additional money on the side. Roberts narrowed his gaze. What do you have in mind? Have you ever been to the planet Los Mares? No, but I think I see where you're going. Lots of ocean farming there, as I understand. Firebrandt nodded slowly. If I'm not mistaken, it's rodeo season. Robert stopped in his tracks and shook his head. How do you have rodeo season on a water planet? It's water rodeo, obviously, said the captain with a shrug. He leaned in close. How well do you think marine animals would respond to a brain implant like Computer has? Robert shook his head. It depends on the animal, but surgery's easy to spot. Too risky if you want to rig a game. The animal's a squid. They have rodeos with squid? They're big squid. How big? Oh, something in the ballpark of 10 meters. Robert's eyes widened. 10 meters? They really like the oceans on Los Mares, said the captain. I should think so. Roberts cocked an eyebrow. They fell silent as they continued on through the airlock and aboard their own vessel. How much do you need to influence the squid? Firebrandt pursed his lips. Oh, shouldn't need much, just something to keep it from veering too far left or right or diving too low. Maybe have it lurch one direction or the other just when we want it to. A simple nano cocktail designed to target the brain's motor control region should do the trick. Nanochemicals can be injected and they're virtually undetectable. They can remain dormant until they receive an activation signal and then break down on command. With the right mix, computer should be able to tap into the squid's vision centers and steer it from aboard the ship. Steer a squid? Suki stood before them with her hands on her hips. What are you two up to now? Just planning a little seaside getaway. The captain flashed a charming smile. He detected suspicion in the narrowing of her eyes. The fierce pirate's stomach fluttered at the notion of someone he trusted, perhaps even loved, questioning his motives, even in silence. Half an hour later, Lowry called the Legacy's bridge and informed them her team had stowed the cryogenic containers containing the fish eggs. We were able to jury-rig a power supply, so they should be good as long as you need. Excellent. The captain retrieved a pipe from his trousers pocket and lit it. Set course for Los Mares, Mr. Eldin. Yes, sir, called the helmsman, who stood at the upright wheel console in the center of the bridge. Legacy's grappling claws squealed and scraped as they disengaged from the merchant ship's flank. Thrusters fired and the ship turned. The captain contemplated the data in the holographic tank at the front of the command deck. How long until we reach the jump point for Los Mares? 1 hour, 12 minutes, present speed, reported computer from his station at the side of the bridge. The pale man sat at a console but stared forward, oblivious to all around him. Any sign of pursuit from the freighter? Negative, reported Roberts as he sat back in his seat and smiled. So tell me more about this rodeo. Firebrandt took a puff from his pipe as he considered where to begin. Los Mares was colonized a few hundred years ago by South Americans. One of the sports they brought with them was Chilean rodeo. They adapted the sport to the animals they had. In Chile, they used cows. On Los Mares, it's squid. Search the nets. I'm sure you can find a hollow. Robert searched the galactic network. A moment later, a hologram of a tube-like aquarium replaced the starfield at the front of the bridge. Outside the aquarium's glass walls, eerily silent crowds cheered, waved, and held up banners. Near one end of the tube, 2 people wearing scuba gear straddled sleek sea scooters. A round door opened in the wall, and out shot a 12-meter-long squid, tentacles flailing behind. The 2 people in scuba gear shot after it and forced it to follow the tube's outer wall. Firebrandt removed the pipe from his mouth. Each of the scooters is called a nautilus, he said. The squid must follow the outer wall until the end of the course, otherwise they get no points. Low-powered lasers glimmered through the water, indicating boundary lines. Suki stood up from her station near the back of the command deck and approached Firebrandt. He continued his explanation. They have to drive the squid through a ring at the end of the course. Their goal is to get the squid to touch the ring with some part of its body. If the squid shoots through without touching, they get no points because they didn't control it. They want the squid to touch the ring as far back on its body as possible. If just the tip of its longest tentacle touches, that's the highest score. Roberts sat back and rubbed the top of his bald head. That's why you want to control the squid. You want computer to keep it against the wall and jerk at the last possible moment so you can get a high score. So do you think you can do it? Roberts looked to computer. The pale man's eyes darted back and forth. Yes, the creatures have a suitably simple nervous system. I can compute a mixture of nanochemicals which will allow me to control the creature's movements. The captain felt Suki's hand grasp his shoulder. He looked up. In the hologram, the men had lost control of the squid. It stopped, reared back, and knocked one of the men from the scooter. Then it darted forward and caught the other man in its tentacles, whipping him from side to side. The hologram cut out as the creature brought the hapless diver to its beak-like mouth. I'd like to keep that from happening, said the captain. You're crazy, breathed Suki. Sell the fish eggs and leave the rodeo to the professional wranglers. "There are 2 writers," interjected Roberts, "who will join you." The captain glanced over his shoulder at the helmsman. Kier Eldin looked from side to side, then tugged on the beads woven into his long beard. "Begging your pardon, Captain, but I don't know how to swim." "You don't need to know how to swim," Firebrandt spoke around the pipe stem. "You just need to know how to pilot a scooter, and you're the best pilot I know." "What about Mr. Roberts?" "We need him to sneak in and feed the squid his nano cocktail." The captain turned his attention to Roberts. "When's the next rodeo?" The first mate checked the computer. "Looks like there's an event in 5 days outside the city of La Serena." His eyes scrolled down the display, then he whistled. "The prize is $1 million in gold." Firebrandt looked back to Eldin. "I'll cut you in for a double share if you help." The helmsman looked dubious, but finally gave a slow nod. "I am a pretty good pilot," he said at last. "All you have to do is help me corral 10 meters of mutated mean-ass mollusk." The captain grinned around the pipe stem. "Shouldn't be worse than our typical raid." "I think you're both certifiable lunatics." Suki turned around and stormed from the bridge.